19 here. The ShivWorks Spyderco. People need to be more focused on process goals than outcome goals. So a process goal is, I have to stop being such a fat ass. Why is every single person, for the most part, right, understands that they need to take care of their body, that they should be eating healthy, that they should be doing some kind of fitness routine. And then the question becomes like, why are so few people actually doing it? Why is it unusual to meet someone who's in good shape? If someone's new to fitness and they're hearing this, what I would want them to take from this is the idea that what makes jiu-jitsu unique as a martial art is that you're able to practice it against a fully resistant opponent. That, all right, you think this is a good technique? Yeah, try it on me. I'm gonna try to do my best to not let you do this technique to me. Brazilian jiu-jitsu is a very effective art in terms of that idea of kind of sport fighting or honor fighting or just fighting where there's some set of very specific, whether they're written or unwritten rules.
Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. Today I had on Jason Kapnick for a second time. We talk about everything from fitness, getting fit in 2026, how one can do that if they're not fit, easy ways they can do it. Talks about strength training, how people can start and get really fit this year and actually stick to it. He also talks about jiu-jitsu, people wanting to get into that, how he would go about it. He's a black belt, so he talks about, what he does with his students, how you can learn, how you can get your black belt, how you can get your blue belt. Super awesome podcast talking about jiu-jitsu and fitness. Hope you guys enjoy and like and subscribe. All right, Jason Kapnick, round two.
Yeah, good to be back.
Yeah,
how
thanks
are you?
for coming on the pod. Good, man. I mean, it's New Year's. It's the first time doing a podcasting in the morning, or one of the first. Usually it's always after work at 5 or 6, so it's nice to do it.
We got our cold South Florida weather today, so we're concealing our full-size pistols and wearing our jackets today.
Yeah, it's cozy.
It's cozy.
We wait we go through 9 months of hell and hot weather to get maybe 2-3 months of 50 degrees or 60 degrees.
Yeah, it's nice when you get a day like today.
Yeah, so what are you carrying these days? What's your EDC?
Yeah,
just because everyone loves the pocket dumps.
Yeah, we love
Sean Ryan show got huge, I think, doing mainly the EDC dumps.
We got some pocket dumps here today. We can do that. We're carrying we got medical supplies here. We got the tourniquet. It's a Cat Gen 7 tourniquet held in a Mastermind Tactics tourniquet holder. Big fan of this. Conceals really well. It's very comfortable. It's all soft, completely non-metallic too, if that's a concern. We got the G-Shock watch today, just a basic, probably $65 on Amazon G-Shock watch for firepower here. I'm carrying a Glock 19. Glock 19 here with a Holosun 407C and a Tenacore Curtum Lux 3. We have the Mastermind Tactics wedge on it as well. And we also got the TLR7 sub here, or TLR7 X rather for the full size pistol here, and just standard stock Glock. We got a knife as a tool here. We actually have a beautiful Spyderco Crew Carta Para 3 here, a crew wear blade with this nice micarta canvas handle. This is it's actually a gift from a mutual friend of ours. Yeah,
super nice. I have the regular Para 3.
Yeah.
Nice
I'm a big fan of the Spyderco. So this I carry just as a tool. I don't consider this to be a weapon in any way, but opening boxes or for utility. And then as far as a weapon for a blade or something to use on a support side, we have the ShivWorks Spyderco, the ShivWorks Pakal here. These are very hard to find. And what's cool about this, it has this Emerson wave feature here, this post on it. And if you notice, when I pulled it out of my pocket, it deployed itself. So it's not nearly as accessible as a true fixed blade, but it gives some optionality to have a weapon accessible on the support side that, if your gun hand got tied up, as I said, it's not nearly as accessible as a true fixed blade knife that you might, clinch pick, for example. But it's a nice little option, and it's a cool thing. I'll show one more time. The post hooks on the pocket.
You have to twist it, right? Yeah.
You have to catch the pocket. Actually, put it in a little bit low. Normally, when I carry it, I'll carry it kind of all the way to the front of the pocket here, so that as it gets pulled out,
that's awesome.
Into the hand. Yeah, so it's cool. This was a collaboration between Craig Douglas and Spyderco, going back a long time. I think they're pretty limited release. Every year, Spyderco, or every couple of years, they'll drip a few of them out. And I was lucky enough to snag one. So that's what's in my pockets today.
Nice.
I won't need any of this for podcasting, so I'll just put it behind me.
Awesome. So is it still clear, right? It's focused on you?
Yeah,
Awesome.
focus looks good.
All right, so I guess today on the podcast, I want to focus on two things going into 2026. A lot of people have their New Year's resolutions. Most people are going to last a month and then quit.
Right.
But for the people who are going to continue and follow through for both fitness, getting healthy in this busy world where we're all super busy with a bunch of responsibilities, work, whatever it might be. And then the second thing being martial arts, specifically for you, Jiu-Jitsu. I mean, you're head instructor, one instructor in 10 Planet Jiu-Jitsu. You're a black belt.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to dive into those two topics. I feel like they're getting more popular, especially Jiu-Jitsu, fitness. A lot of people are coming around and getting back into the whole wellness thing. That industry is blowing up in general.
Yeah.
People are starting to care about their bodies a bit more and
Sure.
just feel good. So I guess, whichever topic you want to start on, whether that's fitness or Jiu-Jitsu, and then we'll dive into that.
Yeah, well, we can start with fitness. I think, you said it. Most people don't follow through on their New Year's resolutions, and it's something I've been interested in a long time. I had my gym in New York City for about 7 years, from 2014 until the pandemic. And, obviously this is the time of year when a lot of people are coming in, they're thinking about it. And I think sometimes people that are fit and they're working out 12 months a year and they've been in it for a long time have a tendency to almost look down their nose at New Year's resolution of why are you starting now? You're just jumping on the bandwagon kind of thing. But I think it is a time of renewal in the seasons of the year. You get done with the holidays and the calendar changes. It's kind of in the sort of collective consciousness, this idea of renewal and starting new habits. So I think it is a great time to get into fitness. And I think, there's a lot of reasons that most people don't stay. I think that people need to be more focused on process goals than outcome goals. So a process goal is what I'm going to do, and an outcome goal would be what are the things that are going to happen as a result of my actions. So a process goal, for example, might be, hey, I'm going to go to the gym 4 days a week every single day this year, and I'm not going to miss a week of that, or I'm going to plan my rest days, whatever it is. I'm going to go a certain amount of times, or I'm going to do a certain number of workouts, or I'm going to do them in a certain way. And that's a process goal.
Alrighty, quick interruption to the show. We'll be right back in 30 seconds. This show is sponsored by YMW Security. We are a company based out of Florida specializing in security for commercial properties, multifamily, and new development. If you need your property service with armed or unarmed security, or our AI technology cameras and hybrid approach to bringing down the costs and bringing amazing service to your property here in Florida, go to ymwsecurity.com or shoot me an email at y.manacherry@ymwsecurity.com or info@ymwsecurity.com. Thank you so much, and let's get back to the show.
As opposed to an outcome goal saying, hey, this is the year where I'm going to finally be able to run a half marathon in under 2 hours, or this is the year where I'm going to lose 15 pounds. I think that we're a lot more in control of our actions than we are of the results, obviously. That what we do is something we can directly control. And I think that people are, overly optimistic in a lot of cases and just generally not good at, especially if they're not into fitness. I think they're generally not good at just knowing what to expect. So someone might say, hey, I want to lose this much weight, or I want to be able to do, this Tough Mudder or Spartan race, or I want to be able to do this, and maybe it's realistic and maybe it's not, So to set a process goal, I think, is a really good thing. I think one of the other things I've noticed for people who stick with it is that they're able to connect to a really good why of why they're doing it, for their family, for their health, for feeling better. And kind of some of that comes with the idea of, to the extent that there is some bigger overarching reason for them to be getting into fitness in this case, that they should frame it and conceptualize it in terms of what they're moving towards as opposed to what they're moving away from. So, for example, to say, I want to be lean and healthy and have lots of energy and be able to play with my kids. And we can tighten that up and make it more specific and measurable and relevant and time-bound and whatnot. But that's something that I'm moving towards. I want to move towards being lean and healthy and having energy for my kids and having, whatever. What an away goal might be would be like, I have to stop being such a fat ass. I can't do this anymore. I have to just stop living this way. And what ends up happening is the further you get from that initial state, that if you are, you're sedentary, you're on the couch a lot, you're overeating, etc. If your goal is framed in terms of an away goal, you're moving away from something, well, the further on your path you move, the further you get kind of from your motivation. That it's like, all right, you've gotten to the point where you were sedentary, you're overeating, etc. Whatever your personal problem might be, and 2-3 months go by, and now you're a lot less sedentary. You're off the couch. You're getting some workouts in, and now you've kind of reached your goal. You're not a fat ass anymore. Great. So now your motivation's gone in a lot of cases, and that's when people kind of just fall back into patterns of comfort and just kind of, come on and off. So I think as opposed to, okay, hey, I've been focused on being lean, on having enough energy, on being able to do certain things that I wasn't able to do. Well, the closer you get to it, the more your motivation now increases, because now you're closer to it and you're feeling the benefit. It's in terms of something that you want. So I think that's important for people. And, that's just kind of general New Year's resolution advice. And I think that, we could probably take that into more general fitness advice of like, why is every single person, for the most part, right, understands that they need to take care of their body, that they should be eating healthy, that they should be, doing some kind of fitness routine. And then the question becomes like, why are so few people actually doing it? Why is it unusual to meet someone who's in good shape? Even I just think of like my son's 4. We hang out with, other families from his school. We see dads at the playground. Like, it is rare to me to meet another dad who you look at him and you're like, oh, that guy clearly works out. Some people are, they're not necessarily overweight or they're not necessarily like unhealthy, but it's so rare to meet someone. It's like, oh, wow, this guy's really into working out. And why is that? It's a lot of different things. It's people ask, well, why aren't more people healthy? And I think a lot of people have different issues. I think that some people, as humans, we just drift towards what's comfortable for us. And, for a lot of people, there's not enough discomfort there. There's not enough drive towards what our goals are. There's not enough intentionality behind it. We're busy. We have, kids and jobs and all sorts of responsibilities in modern life. And I think that people just lack the intentionality to say, hey, this is something I really have to make a priority. I think that's common. I think that's probably less interesting to someone who's listening to this podcast. I think that I just told you, hey, if you're into fitness, if you tuned into this podcast and this is something on your mind, you probably have the intentionality to follow through with it, or hopefully you do. One thing I think derails people a lot is the inability to manage the ebbs and flows that are needed to sustain a consistent fitness routine over many months and many years. So it comes in both directions. So when people are feeling really good, I think they have a tendency to overdo it in the gym, especially when they're new. They get a little bit of progress. They have a lot of energy. They got a good night's sleep. They've been eating well, and then they overdo it in the gym. And it's not sustainable. Perhaps it's not sustainable like physiologically, that you're too beat up, that you're under recovered. But I also think that there's a component to it that it's not sustainable psychologically. That if you do a workout and you had to do 100 kettlebell swings in 10 minutes and you did it, and it was like you're almost dying on that day that you felt good. Well, now the next time you come back, it's like, oh man, I know my effort's going to be diminished from that, and you kind of put it off, or you skip it, and people they have trouble maintaining that. Mm-hmm. And then on the other end of the spectrum, I think that people have trouble managing the down days. That I was working with someone the other day, a personal training client. His back was a little stiff. He had played some tennis. I think he said he slept on a funny position or something. His back was just a little stiff. Didn't stop us from working out, but we changed a couple things in the workout. We did maybe a little bit of extra time on warm up and things like that. And we still got a great workout in. And I think that people lack that skill. People
being the all or nothing.
Yeah, I think it's just hard for people to just like I said, manage the ebbs and flows, that when things are going well, it's easy to get in there. With the caveat, like we said, that it's also easy to overdo things. And then when things are down, it says, oh, maybe my back feels a little bit strange today. I'm going to skip it for tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes and, then there's another reason, and things fall off track. And I think that fitness really benefits from just consistent, repeated effort and, not biting off more than you can chew, but also that even when you're unmotivated or not feeling your best or underslept or whatever, that you're still going to just make that commitment to yourself and get it done. One of the other things, just to put into like big buckets of why do people fail their fitness goals from kind of a more technical and, kind of physiological perspective, a lot of people get derailed by injury. Certainly in Jiu-Jitsu, we'll talk about Jiu-Jitsu as a whole separate animal, I think, in a lot of ways for how to become successful in Jiu-Jitsu. Obviously some overlap, but, injury, I think, is something that really derails people. I think that, if you're going to sit at a desk for 50, 60 hours a week and then expect to do the same kind of workouts that you did, when you were in college, I think that a lot of times people are, they're going to have back pain, they're going to have shoulder pain, things like that. So I do think there is a big component of working out in the right technical way that's biomechanically proper, that fits your personal posture and limitations and restrictions, and then works within that to build the quality of your movement. I think that's a really important part of a successful fitness routine. It's something that's given me the longevity to still be working out as hard as I am. I'll be 40 this year. And so, yeah, and then the other side of that is kind of the psychological side of injury, is that people are just, they're just way too impacted by pain. Now, I'm not saying like if an exercise specifically hurts you in a way that feels like an injury that you should continue to do it. But I think that just because something's bothering you, I think that in the fitness industry, I've certainly been guilty of it in the past. Like when I had my gym had clinical services attached to it. So we had to be very, intentional about what our fitness department was doing, making sure that our fitness department was not trying to, do anything that was physical therapy or, treating pain, that's something that had to be clinical. But the idea, I think too many people have gotten the messaging that it's not normal to have pain, and that if something hurts that you need to, go get that checked out, and that you shouldn't be working out in pain. And I don't really buy into that. I think that stuff's going to hurt from time to time.
Just to be clear, right, people listening, like, you mean if someone has like hurt their lower back, they shouldn't be working out back, right? They shouldn't be working out that muscle group. You're saying if something hurts them, they're actually injured, they should focus on. I'm saying they should focus on a different muscle group that day, or if their shoulders tweaked, they should work on their legs. Or you're saying even work out that same muscle group that hurts.
Potentially,
do you mean injured? Or do you mean like hurts, a sore?
Yeah,
like, what do you mean?
I think that's a really gray area. I think that. And that comes with, experience, and I think that there is a certain toughness factor to it. So, like, for example, the same example, we had a personal training client, his back's bothering him a little bit. Doesn't seem like it's, super injured. It's just like, hey, I'm aware of this today. We were supposed to do barbell deadlift that day. We said, you know what? That's probably not a good idea. But we did some kettlebell deadlift at a lighter weight with maybe a slightly reduced range of motion. And what I found in my experience is that a lot of times the body likes that. It almost gives you a sense of safety of, oh, okay, I was able to move it and it didn't hurt, and I got some blood flowing in the area. And
so you're just leaving it like not moving it at all and just keeping it stiff.
Like at a minimum, I think that even if one part of your body hurts, that doesn't mean that your entire body should be sedentary. Actually, quite the opposite. So like if your elbow hurts, you should still be able to do a lower body workout. And what I've certainly found in my experience is that if my knee hurts and I do an upper body workout, just the process of going to the gym, getting warmed up, getting my body temperature up, and going through a sweat and going through the exertion, a lot of times your knee's going to feel better just from the whole, exertion of being in the gym. So, depending on what your specific injury is and what it's obviously a very general statement that I'm making, and the specifics of your situation will guide your actions. But yeah, I think that people get derailed by injury. I think that's a huge thing. And I think that's, like, for me, and in my personal training practice and owning a gym over the years, I think that was somewhere where I do think some external guidance can add a lot of value, both in terms of avoiding those aches and pains initially, but also how to build consistency. Even it's normal for stuff to just feel different as your body's changing. What you might call just like some pain, and you'd still go to jiu-jitsu and be fine. Somebody else might come in and say, "Oh my God, I'm so injured," and so it's very subjective. But I think to some extent, people should be comfortable with at least a little bit of discomfort and understanding that, hey, I still need to get my work done. Again, with a lot of caveats that if your shoulder's killing you and you have overhead press that day, like, I'm not saying be dumb. But I am saying that sometimes there is a toughness factor, with the injuries. A lot that goes into that.
Okay, cool. And then for most people listening, I feel like they're not like the biggest fitness people. Maybe they are. But what I want to help, you explain and you guide is to guide people who are, let's say, in their 20s or in their 30s, even in their 40s, who have been busy with work, right? Everyone's got to make $1. Working all day, 9 to 5, 9 to 6, even, maybe more than that.
Sure.
They're balancing that. They got kids. They got a wife. They want to, make time for working out, right? Because I really believe it's about making time for it and deciding 100%. It's important, just like people make time for their Netflix at night, or like, oh, I got to detox, I got to chill, I had a long day at work, I have to scroll and doom scroll YouTube, right? And they make time for that. So I feel like, what is a good, start for someone who's not, maybe they used to be fit in high school and now they want to get back into it. They're overwhelmed by the idea. Like, what's just a good place to start? And what should the mindset be? Because I think that people, when they say, oh, I just want to start going on a diet and I want to start working out, it doesn't ever last.
Right.
I think it should be like a lifestyle. Like, hey, I'm an athletic person. I am a person who goes to the gym. Like, you just identify as that, like Atomic Habits, like James Clear talks about that in his book, like 1% better, and just identifying, like, I'm a person who works out, I'm a healthy eater or whatever, versus like, I'm going to go on a diet for 2 months, or I'm going to work out for 2 months. Like, no, this is what I do. Like, kind of, I'm curious what I guess it's a two-pronged question of like mindset going into it, like what you think of mindset, and what's a healthy routine? Is it 5 days a week? Is it 2 days a week? Is it even 1 day a week just to get them started? Should they start with a personal trainer? All that type of stuff. That probably depends on budget. But I know it's a loaded question, but I feel like a lot of people can benefit from that. People who want to get into fitness and just don't know where to start.
Yeah, I mean, let's tackle the mindset component first. I think that from a mindset component, you put the nail on the head, hit the nail on the head, which is that kind of 1% better every day. I think we might have talked about this on the last podcast, but this idea of Kaizen, of just a continuous small improvement mentality in your lifestyle. And one of the things I think is really part and parcel to the idea of Kaizen and making small continuous improvements is the acceptance of your current state. So I think that people get into fitness and it's just like, I just can't be like this anymore. I don't, they're mad at themselves. They don't want to be like this anymore. They want to be at the end state, and they're not willing to accept the current state. And what do I mean by that is that they're going to set fitness goals that are unrealistic, that they're going to try workout routines that are maybe unsustainable, because they're just looking for just more progress than really they can sustain, because they're not taking that small bite-sized approach of just how can I improve from where I am now, instead of just saying how can I become something. Well, let's just accept that where you are today is where you are today. That, in the same way that we can't change the sunlight and the air that we're breathing and the current state of our being, in kind of a meditation or in a Zen way, we just exist and we are. And I think people need to accept the current state of whatever their fitness and mentality is and just strive to make small improvements from there. And that's where focusing on process, I think, is really beneficial from people. From a fitness perspective, I think that obviously I have my own fitness philosophy. There's things that I believe in. I believe in strength. I believe in authentic human movement, biomechanics. I think that rotational strength is really important. I think that end ranges of motion are real. I have a fitness philosophy.
What's end ranges of motion?
Oh, yeah, just that, for example, on a chest press, like being able to be strong from the lengthened position, from the end range of motion. And so there's a flexibility component, I guess is what I'm getting at. Just range of motion generally.
And the mobility, you're really big into mobility too, right? Which helps.
Yeah. I mean,
like moving around and being flexible.
You know, especially as a jiu-jitsu athlete, most of my training, personally, my own workouts are geared towards making me better at jiu-jitsu and making me on the mat, staying longer on the mat, and longevity in jiu-jitsu. So for that, I think, you know, movement becomes so critical. I think for general population people, I think there's probably there's a point of diminishing marginal return on mobility that for a jiu-jitsu guy, the more flexible you become, the more you're able to invert, and the further you're able to get into a split. That's just going to give you more movement variability on the mat. It lets you solve more problems. It lets you deal with pressure, like literally, you know, pressure passing through flexibility. So in jiu-jitsu, I think the ceiling on mobility is almost unlimited. For general population, you know, I don't think somebody working at a desk needs to spend time like working on a split necessarily. I think that you should have enough flexibility that you can move through some minimum range of human tasks, that you can, you know, bend down and pick your kids up, and that you have enough flexibility to avoid injury.
Like a deep squat or a Cossack
squat.
Yeah,
exactly. Deep squat, that you're able to get into a squat, that you're able to, you know, your hamstrings aren't so tight that you're, you know, having back pain, and, you know, it's not affecting your gait in any way. But I think beyond that, I think people are too focused on flexibility as far as, you know, for health. I think they're like, don't get me wrong, it's definitely important to have range of motion, have healthy joints, be able to move through, you know, a biomechanically correct set of motions. But, you know, I think people say, oh, I'm getting older, I need to stretch more, and then they're not even strength training. I think that's misguided as far as priorities. I think that, you know, as we now kind of get into, well, what specifically should people be doing to start a fitness routine? You know, I think prioritizing strength training is a big part of that. And what that'll look like for you specifically may be different. You know, if you have access to, you know, someone who's a personal trainer, like, yeah, that can be great. Like, you know, you can maybe learn to do a Turkish get-up. You can learn to do a kettlebell swing. You can learn to do a barbell squat or an overhead press, or, you know, exercises that might be more free weight based and more difficult to learn, have a little bit more potential for error. You know, if you don't necessarily, if that's not something you want to invest in, you don't have the funds for it or whatnot, I think going to the gym and doing the machines, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. We have a mutual friend. He had a ton of success with, I forgot what it was called. It was called like Dad Strong or something, but basically it was just a burpee workout. And he's like on an ambulance squad, and he doesn't have, you know, according to him, time to go to a gym. And so he's just doing, I don't know exactly what the protocol is, but he's just throughout the day, he'll do, you know, 3 or 4 exertions of maybe 5 to 10 minutes where he just does some burpees with a push-up, and that worked great for him. And, you know, I think the more you get into it, the more you're going to learn what's right for you, and the more you can adjust the routine. But I think starting with something that feels sustainable, I think one of the hallmarks of good programming, that's something I've said for a long time, is that the first couple weeks should feel pretty easy. And we want to avoid that psychological trap that I kind of alluded to earlier, which is you do a workout and then you have nowhere to improve from there, where it's like, oh man, you know, if I did, you know, 100 kettlebell swings in 10 minutes. I felt like I was going to vomit my lungs out when I was done, and it was awesome. But now next time I go to the gym, now I want to do 110 of them, because that's, you know, I'm trying to get better every time. I'm trying to make that improvement. And it's like, oh boy, like, you're setting yourself up for failure. And maybe you have the expectation that, you know, that you're going to, after a really heavy day, you're going to have a couple light weeks where you build back up, and maybe that's okay. But when you're new to it and when you're starting out, I think making it sustainable, and I think there's definitely a time and a place to go super hard and to empty the gas tank. But I think when people are new to it, doing a little bit less and saying, hey, you know what? I did 10 reps there. I bet I could have done 12. Well, all right. Well, now next week when you come in, now you've got something to look forward to, and you can say, hey, I can still be successful with this workout.
So, like, leave the gym with, like, something in the gas tank. Like, don't go crazy.
Yeah,
I
think when you're
I would be making it enjoyable, right? Because if people don't enjoy it, they're not going to do it.
I think workouts have to be kind of the right temperature that, if you're not doing enough, if you're not even, not literally temperature, but if you're not even breaking a sweat and it's just you didn't get the workout, like that's not right either. But if you're just like overheating and like, again, not literally, if you're just running your system so hot that it's like, oh man, like you're redlining, it just tends not to be something that you're going to come in, week out and build a consistency over time. I think that the body does really well with just consistent, repeated effort, something you can recover from. I think that when people, a lot of people in fitness have heard this, but I'm sure a lot of people listening haven't heard this. I think a good concept is the idea of a minimum effective dose. So that term, I believe, comes from pharmacology, from pharmacy, of what's the minimum effective dose of a drug I can give you. And I think that you should take a similar approach in exercise, if not what's the most I can do, or what's the maximum recoverable volume, or just what's the maximum I could do. You could be thinking in terms of, especially when you're new to it, what's the least I can do and still make progress? What's the least I can do and still move closer to my results that I want? And I think taking that mentality, and as you get better at the skill of being consistent, then after, weeks and months, you can ramp up. But starting off, I think people just paint themselves into a corner. They just do too much, and it's like, well, where do I go from here? It's a really common thing that I've seen, and it's something that, I've helped a lot of people with in a personal training context or in a group fitness context with, over the last, 10 years or so. I think prioritizing strength training is really important. I think for results, I think that building muscle and building a more favorable body composition is one of the best things you can do for your health and for your fitness results, and strength training is going to really do that. But, I think ideally I'd love to see someone doing 2 to 3 days of strength training and, 1 to 2 days of some kind of cardio. I think that people should be living an active lifestyle, that they should be walking a lot.
Like walking, right?
Yeah, walking is great. 10,000 steps a day.
Also great with your partner to go at night. I think like DJ, what's his name? DJ Shipley. I forgot his name. He's got really big on his 10-minute walks. Yeah. Like just talking about like every day or every morning, go with your partner. Yeah, you walk 10 minutes in one way, and she walks 10 minutes the other way. You talk about, what you want to talk about. She talks about, it's just a good way to have that social bond of just walking and also getting in that fitness every day. You can do a 20-minute walk. Everyone has time for a 20-minute walk. Whether you're working, you make a phone call during lunch, walk around the block, get some sunlight.
Yeah, the sunlight
is huge. Just like we're in offices all day, you want to get out, do a walk, eat lunch outside, do some steps.
Absolutely. I think after eating, to do a 10-minute walk, I think is really good for digestion, really good for blood pressure, and I mean, walking's great. I think people should look to be more active. Yeah. When I lived in New York City, it was much easier to tell people that, because you could tell people, oh, just get off the subway a stop early and walk the rest of your destination, or instead of getting on at the subway stop near your house, walk 15 minutes to the next stop and then get on the subway. And but here in Florida, the weather's beautiful. A little chilly today, but in general, beautiful. So get the sunlight, get your steps in. Go rescue a dog and take that dog for a walk a couple times a day, whatever it is. Go walk with your partner. But I think just generally having an active lifestyle is a good goal for people, and a good way to not just be fit but also live a good life. I think that there's a lot to be said for going for a walk, as far as what that does for you mentally, organizing your thoughts, clearing your head. I think that there's a grounding component to it, like not electrical grounding, but just feeling your feet against the earth and being connected to the world around you, and a certain presence associated with going out and walking and getting some sun in your face. I think is a fantastic thing.
Yeah, because that can be done early in the morning before work. Like that can, I think that's a good gateway. for people who are just like that's what I want to help a lot of the people who are like, they look at the guys who work out as like, oh, you guys are fitness guys, or you guys like, I don't look at myself as like necessarily a fitness guy. Like I look at myself as, I like to work. I actually enjoy it. It took many years to enjoy it, but now I almost, if I don't work out for 2 days, like I try to go 3-4 days a week. If I don't work out for 2 days, I just feel like I need to let out that energy. Like a good workout for 30-40 minutes of strength training with some mobility and stretching after, then hitting the sauna is like the best feeling ever for me. But like, how does someone, I guess, get to the level where they actually enjoy it, where it's not like a burden? Obviously, nobody really wants to go to the gym in the beginning, but like, how do they get like someone who's new to like actually enjoy the workout? Do you think it's like starting, let's say, on lighter weights and just learning the skill of lifting weights, whether that's bodybuilding or whether that's bodybuilding? People enjoy it. They're really easy workouts. It's bench press, squat. What do you think? What do you think are the 4 most important like compound lifts that everyone should be doing? And then how can they learn to enjoy those? Because I want people to be able to enjoy, fitness, or to actually not look at it as such a burden.
I'll say what I think are 4 really important movement patterns. I'll kind of demur on the second part of the question, which is that everybody should be doing. I think that, some people are going to have certain restrictions that are, going to preclude them from certain exercises, or they're not going to be ready for it from a fitness perspective. But, as I think of it from more of like a performance perspective, I think that everybody should be able to squat, as well as they can, that there's a big mobility and human movement component to squat. I mean, you have young children, so do I. I mean, they squat great. It's really important for your hips and knees and ankles and back and everything. So I think having some kind of squat pattern in there, I think, is really important. I think that having some kind of hinge pattern in there, so like a deadlift or a kettlebell deadlift, I think that really teaches people how to brace their core, engage their lats. One thing that you hear a lot in fitness, I think there's a lot of truth to, is that people tend to be too dominant on the front side of their body. They tend to be very pec dominant. They round their shoulders forward. They tend to be very quad dominant. They're very tight in the quads, very tight in the hip flexors. And I think something like a deadlift teaches you to turn on your lats and turn on your glutes and turn on your hamstrings and kind of balance that dominance of the front of the body with some strength and power and tone in the back of the body. So, yeah, I mean, a squat, a deadlift, I'm a big fan of overhead pressing. That'll be one that, like, I said, should everybody be doing this? No, not everyone's going to be ready to overhead press. I think you have to be able to get to a good overhead position, which a lot of people are going to be compromised on, especially men. They're going to be too tight in the pec. Their head's going to be forward from bad posture, and they might not be able to get overhead.
Overhead press, you mean like a barbell press?
Barbell, a kettlebell. Barbell, kettlebell, sandbag potentially, a dumbbell. But kettlebell tends to sit behind the shoulder in a way that I think is a much more authentic overhead position. But, dumbbell's fine too. I think the idea of, that we live kind of in this, typing and texting posture, that to go overhead forces us to open up our chest and open up our spine. And I think there's a lot of value there. I guess we arbitrarily decided that this is a four exercise list.
I mean, like top 4.
Yeah, sure. I would say one thing that's been really big for me is rotational movement. I think that our bodies are really oriented for rotation. The way the fascia go, the way the muscles are oriented, they're helical. I mean, even our DNA is helical. I think we're really oriented for rotation, and I think the way that we walk, our gait is very rotation based. Throwing, kicking, striking, most of jiu-jitsu, any athletic movement is going to have a rotational component. So I'm a big fan of training that in some way or another. I think Turkish get-up's a way to get at that. That's very accessible for general population people. I think from a sports performance perspective, I use the Landmine University, the Landmine Clean and Jerk, the Landmine Snatch, and its associated exercises. I'm big on that. I think the traditional answer to, like, what are the main movement patterns that people should be training is, like, a push, a pull, a squat, a hinge, a carry, and some rotation. I think there's a Dan John used to be a famous strength coach. That's what he had. But, I think what I would want if someone's new to fitness and they're hearing this, what I would want them to take from this is the idea that there's not any kind of magical exercise necessarily, but that these are all based on, like, I didn't give you a specific squat variation. I didn't tell you back squat, searcher squat, front squat, dumbbell squat, kettlebell. I didn't goblet squat. I didn't give a specific squat variation. I started with the idea of what's authentic human movement. How does a human move? How are our muscles designed to move? What's the most biomechanically efficient way for us to load the tissues that are able to bear that load, prime movers, glutes and hamstrings and lats and whatnot, while reducing stress on the tissues that aren't there to bear load, the joints and the smaller muscles and whatnot, and that we are a beautifully created machine with a specific purpose, and that purpose is movement. And I think our training should reflect that. So, what that means for you, the listener specifically, could take a lot of forms. If you're looking to maximize, jiu-jitsu performance or MMA performance, that might look like one thing. But if you're completely new to the gym, you haven't worked out.
Just want to feel better at work.
You just want to feel better. Like, I think it's perfectly fine to go in, do the machines. Yeah, you're going to have a machine that pushes. You're going to have a machine that pulls. You probably should spend some time learning how to squat, whether you're using a door frame or a pole or something to support you and get into the deep squat. I do think that people should have an eye for movement. And, for us with young kids, you have young kids, you watch them move. It's incredible the way they squat and the way they hang from bars, the way they jump off things. And, just thinking in the context of how is a human supposed to move and what does that mean for a training, I think is an important framework and a really helpful framework for a lot of people.
Okay, amazing. No, I think that's going to be very helpful for a lot of people who are just looking where to start. Yeah, and also, you have a YouTube channel now, no? Aren't you start putting out some content?
I have not put much on YouTube lately, but I do. Yeah, I have a Groundproof YouTube channel. We can link to it.
I'll put everything below Instagram and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I guess we'll pivot into jiu-jitsu now.
Yeah, let's.
Also, that's been blowing up. You have 1 million gyms now, especially in South Florida. Yeah. And people in California, New York also saturated with jiu-jitsu, even Texas now. I think, the death squad's there.
Sure.
All the top grapplers are in Texas now. But, Miami's still a massive hub.
Sure.
And also, where should people start? Someone wants to start in jiu-jitsu. There's two types. There's two camps, right? I think there's the self-defense camp, which is more of the Gracie old school style, and the Valente brothers. And there's kind of the sport jiu-jitsu, and even some sport gyms have some defensive stuff. Mm-hmm. And then we'll kind of, we'll talk about how sport jiu-jitsu can blend into defensive.
Yeah.
I guess we'll keep it not specifically self-defense based, just the sport of jiu-jitsu, how people can start, where they should start, and then how they can avoid injury. Someone who's totally new, because I recently got a friend involved. I brought him down to the gym. I was trying to convince him for months. He almost got attacked and mugged twice. So I finally got him to come, and he came to the gym. They were doing just De La Hiva or a baseball choke, and he was just totally lost. He's how does this apply to how am I gonna apply this? I'm dude, it just takes time, and you'll figure it out. But what do you think is the best way for someone looking to start? What gym should they look for, etc.?
Yeah, well, I think that the sport jiu-jitsu, what makes jiu-jitsu unique as a martial art is that you're able to practice it against a fully resistant opponent. That, all right, you think this is a good technique? Yeah, try it on me. I'm gonna try to do my best to not let you do this technique to me. As opposed to, a lot of traditional martial arts, you'll meet people who they think they're so deadly that they can't practice their art. And, there's plenty of videos of some McDojo guy getting the shit beaten out of him by an MMA fighter, because the idea of testing your ideas against resistance is really important. I think that the Gracies specifically and Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, I don't think Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I don't think Gracie Jiu-Jitsu is ever really designed as a self-defense thing, despite what they say. I think that when we talk about self-defense or self-protection, what we're talking about, at least for a normal socially adjusted adult, we're talking about criminal assault here. We're not talking about getting in a fight in the schoolyard. or getting in a fight at the bar. Like, don't get in fights at the bar. Don't get in gentlemen's fights where there's no weapons and, there's no gentleman's agreement out there. Someone could pull a knife, a gun at any second. So, like, don't get into street fights. If someone calls you a name at the bar, like, who cares? Like, why are you at the bar anyway? Don't drink alcohol. But so I think that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a very effective art in terms of that idea of kind of sport fighting or honor fighting or just fighting where there's some set of very specific, whether they're written or unwritten rules. So if a bunch of Brazilians have a quote-unquote street fight where you on Friday decide that somebody offended you, surfing at Ipanema Beach, and so tomorrow on Saturday we're going to have like an honor fight, and 50 of our friends are going to encircle us and cheer us on, and there's no weapons, and we're just going to go fight on the beach. That's not a street fight. That's a sport fight. And I think this Gracie idea of all fights end up on the ground, and I think it's really misguided. I think that that's not a good idea for the most part, to just be on the ground. Like, I've seen Gracie Jiu-Jitsu stuff where they're encouraging people to pull guard in street fights. And to me, that's absolutely crazy. I think that, I do think that a more sport-based approach to Jiu-Jitsu is a better start, because I don't think the self-defense Jiu-Jitsu is really getting at what people are actually looking for out of self-defense. Like you mentioned, your friend was mugged or whatever. I don't think the Gracie approach is really the best. I think
that's good for Jiu-Jitsu, probably good for control in general. Right?
Yeah.
Learning control.
Yes.
If things go,
exactly.
They go physical.
So right. So I think that you've heard me talk about this before, that when it comes to Jiu-Jitsu and self-defense and all these things, we should have a concept of skills versus context. So what are the skills? Well, the skills might be, how to avoid a takedown, or how to do a foot sweep, or how to control somebody's wrist, or if someone grabs your wrist, how to break a grip on your wrist. Those are all hard skills. And then there becomes context. So the context is, well, how do I apply those skills? That, if I'm, surrounded by 40 people on the beach and I know nobody's going to come kick me in the head, well, maybe I do have the context to, execute a takedown that grounds both of us, and maybe I do want to use the ground for control. Or, you're at your synagogue and some guy comes in and he's unarmed and he's just crazy, and you've got 80 of your closest friends there. We're all armed and we just want to restrain this guy and, handcuff him until the cops come. Okay, like maybe we can use the ground as a very effective tool for control. But I think that we need to develop skills to the absolute best extent that we can develop those skills. And then we can think about, what is our context? Are we a police officer? Are we on our shul security team? Are we just, a dad who's just going about his daily life? And then you can think about what that means for you. What context in which would I be willing to draw my gun? What context would I go to the ground if that's something that I would even ever do, etc. And so sport jiu-jitsu, it lets us develop the skills to the fullest extent possible, because like we said, we're doing it against a resistant opponent. So that idea of using the game to develop the skills, it makes it fun, it makes it sustainable. And I think it makes for a much better jiu-jitsu as a lifestyle. So yeah. And then if it does come to, a self-defense situation, well, now you've developed your skills to the absolute best context possible, or to the highest extent possible. And now you can start thinking about what the context is. And, I think when it comes to self-defense too, I think there's also this kind of just like idea within the self-defense community that bad guys have guns and good guys don't, or the bad guy always has the weapon and the good guy doesn't. And like in a lot of traditional martial arts, it's, disarming people and hand-to-hand fighting. It's like, hey, if you're worried about criminal assault, if you're worrying about, getting mugged, that should probably involve tools, whether that's a gun, whether that's a knife, whether that's pepper spray. I think this idea of just all self-defense is unarmed is just not the right approach to it. So, the question is, how can people get into jiu-jitsu and make jiu-jitsu a part of their lifestyle?
So I think that's a good start for most people. Like, they don't have any, like, for someone to start doing, firearm training, Muay Thai, jiu-jitsu, etc. Kali, whatever it might be. Like it's a lot to swallow at
Yeah.
first. So I think it's a good base, for someone to start in the game of, not self-defense, but like in the game of understanding violence and like getting good at skills, and then they can start applying tools to those skills and then layering from there.
It's like,
but like, what's a good start? I just want to start, jiu-jitsu, and then we'll go into like how we'll talk about Craig Douglas, Ruben from Paradox. Like those guys blend the two worlds beautifully. That could be a whole nother podcast on like, how they blend martial arts with firearms and understanding, what real self-defense is with training with Sims and all that. But like, just like to the regular person who has not like, touched the martial art world.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's
and we can also talk about the health benefits too. Like the fitness wise, the cardio, the friendship, the camaraderie. I probably cut that out. Yeah. I don't even know. I can't pronounce the word right now. So like just all that, you know.
So like, I mean, let's start with why, right? Why is jiu-jitsu such a good entry point for the into the things that you said? Well, jiu-jitsu is such a good entry point into things that you said because number one, like we've already mentioned, it's something that you can train against a fully resistant opponent, and I think that has a multitude of benefits. Some of that is technical. Like we said, we actually have to test our skills and our techniques against a resisting opponent, but it also gets us used to having someone put their hands on us with bad intent and putting our hands on other people and getting used to just tussling and, roughhousing with bad intent. Obviously not that we have bad intent to hurt somebody in training, but yeah, like I'm going to, until you tap, I'm going to try to strangle you. I'm going to try to, break your arm. And then when you tap, I'll let go. I'll also just caveat saying that as a black belt, I'll never hurt you. There's a lot of times I let go of submissions because somebody doesn't know that they should be tapping. But the point is that jiu-jitsu lets us have these experiences where we're going to almost the limit. And then, as you mentioned, there's the fun component and the fitness component. So I think that people need to find a culture and a gym where they feel comfortable. I mean, I would personally encourage people to avoid kind of like excessively just the McDojo aspects of jiu-jitsu. Like if they're making you only buy their gi and you can never wear another gi, if they make you like just way too much formal stuff of bowing to the professor and saying us all the time and having to, if you tie your belt, you have to face the corner of the room and, your professor doesn't like it if you're not sitting upright and seiza when you're watching technique. Like, I think that's complete bullshit. That's not what jiu-jitsu is about. When I started jiu-jitsu, we would just get together in t-shirts and rash guards and t-shirts and board shorts and we would just tussle. There was no bowing and formality. I think that's something that's come much later for people to make a business out of it. But yeah, avoid McDojos because I just think it's weird and, it's just, you're a grown-ass man. You want someone telling you what you can and can't wear, how, like, bowing to like professor and, there's a respect component to the martial arts. Don't get me wrong. But,
yeah, more of like, I guess they call it the American jiu-jitsu now. It's just like a culture of like, hey, I have more experience. I'm a black belt, like 10th planet. Like, I'm just going to give you instruction and, come learn with me versus like, I'm your scholar or rabbi or priest. You know what I mean? Like this kind of like weird respect. Obviously there's respect to someone who knows more than you, someone who's teaching you, but it's like, you don't have to start bowing necessarily. I mean, people have the traditions and the old school schools, but I definitely hear what you're saying.
There's a certain, obviously there's got to be a certain amount of respect and mutual understanding that if we're going to be, tussling with each other and, doing these things that simulate harm to each other, obviously can be really harmful, strangling and breaking limbs and whatnot. There has to be some kind of culture where we're all on the same page, that we're respecting each other as far as, the way that we roll and the way that we treat each other. And, for example, one of the things we do a lot of stand-up grappling in my classes. We never start from the knees. We always start standing. And sometimes in a crowded room, what I tell people is that might mean that, someone shoots a double on you and you don't have room to sprawl out because you're going to run into another partner group. Like, you might have to accept the takedown. And we want to build a culture where we prioritize the safety of the group over scoring a point on our training partner. So, like, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be any culture of respect. I'm just saying that the formalities, I think, are just ridiculous. So I think, the white belt's job is to show up to jiu-jitsu for a minimum of 3 days a week for as long as it takes to get a blue belt, which is probably anywhere from 9 months to 2 years potentially, and I think that, I guess we can start getting into like, how can someone be successful with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? You want to talk about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, how can you be
even now, like I've been a blue belt for many years, and just been when having more kids and this and that, like it's just been hard to be consistent with work. Cause like when I'm leaving work, it's already late, and then it's like I want to go home and help with the kids, and it's like, oh, there's Jiu-Jitsu at 6 or 7 usually when work's finishing up. So I've obviously chosen the latter to be with the kids over Jiu-Jitsu, but like it's something I try to do on the weekends, and I try to keep it consistent. But it's like I'm not like when I was single working, doing 4, 5, 6 days a week. It's more like once or twice at most. So that's kind of why I haven't been progressing. But also I think it's kind of like we were talking about systems, like working out with all that other stuff. Is a lot of gyms are just like, okay, now we're doing this, Del Heave, now it's just like it goes in one year, I go to the class, I learn that, and then it goes out the other year, and I train for another week, and then it's just like I just stick to my A game or whatever I know, and then I feel like I'm not learning, and I kind of get stuck in it.
Yeah.
Versus like some schools, I know Atos does this, and a few others. They'll spend a month on passing guard, spend a month on back attack, they'll spend a month. So kind of like you can learn and then apply those, and it's kind of fluid between the different I guess what is it called, like cycles of like, okay, we're gonna do back attacks, cycles, we're gonna do back attacks, so like you're learning various back attacks for a month, and then you'll go over the same techniques, you'll get practice versus doing Del Hiva one day or doing passing guard the other day, doing a back attack, like just random techniques, and it's just hard to find the flow. So that's kind of been my thing of like I feel like I have not been getting better, but kind of like what we talked about the 1%, like a lot of people would give up. And a lot of times I felt like giving up because like every time I go, I just get smashed even harder, and I'm just like so bad. But it's just like, hey, like just by me going is kind of like paddling against the river, like in a kayak. Of like, I'm getting worse, but like if I just keep showing up and getting smashed, like at least I'm keeping my skill. I'm not getting worse. But if I don't start not going, then I'm getting worse. It's like obviously ideal would be good to go a lot more. But like for me, it's just like, hey, at least I'm getting in training. I'm sweating. I'm getting smashed. I'm staying humble. Like, and that's kind of been where I'm at. I obviously need to improve and find better systems and probably do more study at home and work on it, but it's just been so busy,
Yeah, no, and I think that's a big part of jiu-jitsu in your 20s is just keeping that flame alive of just, just staying on the mat. I personally, I got my blue belt, I think I was like 21, 22, and then for most of my 20s, I kind of wasn't training, and same thing as, work and whatnot, and I think that, so like the white belt's job is just to be consistent. All you have to do is show up 3 times a week for, a year, however long it takes you to get the blue belt. You can't be thinking about how am I successful. You don't need to think about technique. You don't need to think about what are the holes in my game? How can I be doing better in my roles? You don't need to think about any of that. Like sometimes a white belt will ask me, after rolling with them, they'll be like, oh, what could I do better? And it's like, I'll tell them, you just need to keep showing up and being consistent. They're like, man, like I was hoping, you'd give me like the one thing that I'm going to tell you, and now I'm not going to be able to pass your guard anymore. Like, oh, you just need to, whatever. But I'll say to them, you just need to show up. You just need to be consistent and just keep being consistent. And they'll be like, man, like I was hoping you'd tell me something better. But then most of them won't do that, And I think white belts, jiu-jitsu is not for everybody, like not everybody's going to go to the, have someone sweating on them and wrestling. Not a lot of people aren't going to like that. And, I don't know. A lot of people aren't going to like that. That's fine. But if you do want to do jiu-jitsu and you do love jiu-jitsu, then yeah, I think what derails white belts is expectation of, wanting to get better or, expecting things to be different than they were, or just tired of getting smashed and this and that. And I think that, I think you just have to, as a white belt, go in with no expectations and get to your blue belt. Once you become a blue belt, now your job, I think, changes a little bit.
That's the hardest. Blue to purple is the hardest.
That was the hardest for me.
Same for, I'm still at blue, so it's like been the hardest.
I think the blue belt's job is to lose his ego. Obviously, he still has to maintain all the skills of consistency from white belt. You still have to show up probably 3 times a week to make progress. And, like I said, if you're in your 20s, you've got kids, you've got a job, whatever, like just keeping the flame alive and just kind of, keeping your bookmark in the book that there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to make progress in jiu-jitsu, I think you need to show up probably 3 days a week. I think twice a week you're kind of treading water. 3 times a week now you're making progress. Obviously 4 and 5 are good. More than that, I think is unsustainable for a lot of blue belts. But the blue belt's job is largely to get rid of his ego and get rid of his expectations. So when you get to a blue belt, you know about everything in jiu-jitsu, meaning you're not going to like hear about a new guard that you've never heard of. You know what the K guard is. You know what reverse De La Riva guard is. You know what, you've heard of high ground. You've heard of, you know what ashigarami, you know what, saddle is. You know what all the positions are, more or less. And I think that the blue belt trap is to think that you're at a point where you have all the knowledge. You just have to like physically integrate that into the physical expression of that skill. And I think that's not true. I think that as a blue belt, like you're on that, like people always talk about like Dunning-Kruger. I don't know if it's real or not, but that like, as you learn, you get like a peak of overconfidence where you think you know a lot more than you do. And then you hit a valley where you think you know less than you do. But I think the blue belt needs to let go of his expectations and understand that a blue belt is still pretty low on the totem pole, and that what you're going to learn, if you've been doing jiu-jitsu, you got your blue belt in, a year, 15 months, whatever, that you're still so new on your journey. You're going to spend 20, 30 years in this sport. There's so much for you to learn, and I think that's hard for a lot of blue belts to accept. So the blue belt, he's releasing his expectations. He's releasing his ego. The expectation being that you just like, you got promoted, instructor gave you attention, called you up in front of the room, said good things about you. You've been doing great in your roles, and now it's like you want to have the expectation that you're going to continue to do well against other people, and you have to let go of that. You have to, as a blue belt, now you can start thinking about your game. What is my game? What do I need to work on? And again, like getting rid of that ego. And we can talk. I can tell you what I think ego is. Like, how do I define the ego? But getting rid of that ego and just saying, hey, it doesn't necessarily matter if I win my roles. I'm going to take enough pride in what I'm doing that I'm trying to win, or I'm trying to do well so that I can get the feedback I need to of are my techniques working or not. But I'm also willing to work on things that I know I need to. I'm willing to give up points when I make a mistake, as opposed to using strength or athleticism to not give up points. Like if I'm about to get swept, I put my hand in the wrong place. He got a sweep on me. Maybe I'm athletic enough to, explode out of it, but that's probably not the best thing for my long-term development. I need to just roll at a pace where I'm learning. So that's kind of the blue belt's job. And a blue belt will become a purple belt, I think, when they're consistently hitting submissions against their training partners. Is kind of like a good gauge of like when I know someone's ready to be a purple belt.
Which training partners? Like what other belts? Doesn't matter.
Yeah, just in general. Like I'll see a lot, like probably against other white and blue belts, maybe against like smaller, less athletic purple belts or whatnot. I'll see a lot of blue belts who do really well as far as like, sometimes they're wrestlers, but they don't have to be, where they can go in, they have really good base, they might have a couple sweeps that they're good at, and they can get into a roll, even with someone who's a higher belt, and they can pass the guard maybe, they can do well in a scramble, and they could, dominate or like, quote unquote, win a roll against a training partner, but they're not getting submissions. And to me, that shows they just haven't fully integrated the whole idea of jiu-jitsu, which is control leading to submission. So they're getting the control part, but they're not getting the submission part. And that was something that was told to me when I was a blue belt, and I've definitely seen to be true over time. But the blue belt, why do so many people like quit at blue belt famously? I think the answer is just because of expectations. They just think that they should be doing better. They think that they think that they have their game figured out, and then it's just frustrating when black belts or brown belts or purple belts just continually shut them down. So I think that the blue belt needs to really just be focused on the totality of jiu-jitsu and not really like working on their A game at that stage of their development. I think one of the one of the worst traps a blue belt can fall into is having like one technique that they're really good at. So I can think of this guy from up north who had a really good ankle lock as a blue belt, and he didn't want to pass the guard. All he wants to do is just sit on this ankle lock, and he was tapping a lot of blue belts with it, and a lot of like even purple belts, and he was getting a lot of taps with it, but then he's just stuck because it's like you're just doing your same thing over and over. So I think the blue belt needs to really be focused on the totality of jiu-jitsu, working on escapes, understanding the leg game, understanding guard play, understanding guard passing.
You're saying working on things that they're uncomfortable with, knowing they can lose the position, right? Kind of like, I guess, with the competitive shooting, like, it's okay to get, like, Charlies or even get Mikes, like, pushing speeds. Like, you get uncomfortable, and, like, versus always trying to get alpha or always trying to get the submission, you can get uncomfortable. Like, for me, that'd be leg locks. Like, I'm terrible when it comes to leg locks, and it's just because of my pillars in jiu-jitsu was more in Gracie style originally, so they don't really touch that stuff as much at all. So it's kind of like I didn't have that as much. Now, like, all the 10th Planet, you guys are huge on leg locks and the whole system, and even the sport jiu-jitsu, but like I just feel like I have more traditional style. And but it's modernizing, it's getting better. Like, the whole jiu-jitsu world in general.
I think that the blue belt probably doesn't have enough just experience or knowledge or context or whatever to just say, hey, this is my game. Like, by the time you're a blue belt, you know what your body type is. Like, my body type lends itself well to butterfly guard and half guard. And I think I knew that at a blue belt level, but I would never have imagined, what a big part of my game, reverse De La Hiva or, even certain inversions that I do. There's certain stuff that I never would have expected as a blue belt. And I think part of the journey is like, the blue belt should just be focused on the totality of jiu-jitsu and kind of staying zoomed out. And once someone becomes a purple belt, now the game becomes, how do you become a good learner? How do you really start being self-critical? I think the purple belt now does need to take more of an eye on what is my game? How do I fit these techniques to my body and my style and my mentality? And, the purple belt should continue to experiment and be focused on all of jiu-jitsu. But now the purple belt, he needs to start understanding what his game is and the strategy of kind of the things that go on in between the roles. And by the time you're a purple belt, by the time you move from purple belt to brown belt, I think you should have your game like pretty well figured out. And, brown belt, I think brown belt is a lot about polishing your techniques, about continuing to be a good learner and identifying what you need to work on, what your weaknesses are, strategically what to do when, and then technically how to do it, I think is a big part of brown belt. And the difference between a brown belt and a black belt is just mentality. That's my professor who gave me my black belt, George Cernak, who's a Renzo Gracie black belt going back like almost 20 years now. He that's something he always said, is that the difference between a brown belt and a black belt is just mentality. I think that brown belts they still have something to prove. There's still a little bit of like almost insecurity. There's still something where it's like, oh, they have, either they're not going to go super hard because they don't want to get exposed, or they're going to go too hard because they think they need to win. I think once you get to a certain point of like, I'm just comfortable with what's going on, I'm going to spend the rest of my life in jiu-jitsu. My technique speaks for itself, and I can use technique to, protect myself. That even if I get submitted, nothing's going to happen where I'm going to, do something crazy. I think that a lot of like the loss of ego is something that really can, when you realize that you're responsible for protecting yourself in jiu-jitsu, I think you can avoid a lot of injuries that way. I think that's really important. And then, so when you develop that confidence and that sort of presence of mind, I think that's when you become a black belt. And, for me, being a black belt, I guess we'll talk about all 5 belts here. For me, being a black belt is about thought leadership, and that can take many forms. So like John Danaher is obviously a big thought leader in just the field of jiu-jitsu. He's coming up with concepts and strategies and ideas that nobody else has come up with before, and he's, leading the sport forward, as far as thought leadership. So that's on a very high level. But I think it can even mean just as you're an instructor at your local academy, you're a black belt, of just helping your students be focused on the right things, leading their thoughts towards helping them understand jiu-jitsu better. Like something, I got my purple belt from John. I spent over 4 years in the blue basement taking Danaher's classes. And something he used to say a lot is that the job of a coach is not just to necessarily teach you techniques, but also to change the way you think about jiu-jitsu, to change your perspective. And I think that's a form of thought leadership that black belts at all levels can engage in, with their students, or even if they're not an instructor, with the lower belts at their academy. So, I think that's a pretty good roadmap for how to be successful in jiu-jitsu, over the course of your career.
Nice. Thank you so much. No, it was awesome. It was an awesome breakdown.
Yeah.
We're a little bit over the 1 hour mark, and dude, so where can people find you on all the socials?
Yeah, sure. Instagram's probably the best way to follow me. It's just at Jason Kapnick. If you're interested in working with me for training, whether that's personal training, fitness training, or private lessons for jiu-jitsu, just send me an email, jason.kapnick@gmail.com. And you can put training in the subject line. It's less likely to go to spam that way, but I'll probably see it anyway. And shoot me an email, and we'll get started.
Okay, awesome. And then a quick plug for the podcast product. What did you think of this? I mean, I think you took one of the samples before these were made. I made one batch. I think I have probably 200 left. I sold 100 of them maybe. I only made 300. So what did you think of these?
I think it's perfect for what it is. I think that I don't carry off.
But no BS. I'm curious. What
we're on the camera. So
yeah.
I think it's really well made for what it is. I think that I don't carry off body very often, but sometimes I do if I'm going, if I'm at the beach or things like that, or sometimes if I'm with my son and there's something where maybe I don't want to, we're doing the trampoline park or something. I obviously don't want to carry a gun on me at the trampoline park, so I can put it in they have lock boxes there that are secure. So the fanny pack's great for that. I mean, I think that's great. You can get your different inserts. Tenacor makes one now. A lot of other, you can just get a regular ass holster and just put some Velcro on it. I think there's a great way to carry it. That's really discreet. You put an extra magazine in here. I like that you have these static lines in here. You can hook your keys or whatnot. I think you have a dedicated key holder in a lot of them. Yeah, this is fantastic. Don't lose your keys. And I got to give you this one because I think I gave you one of the originals. Yeah,
when it wasn't fully done. Now I kind of finish it off with this. This was the final order. But yeah, I did the YKK, the waterproof in the front,
right.
And the back end opens up quicker because it's just regular YKK.
Yeah,
and then you could put your thing here or whatever, and it doesn't scream tactical.
No, I think it's very I think it's very discreet, and I think that's important. I'll go to the playground or I'll go to a restaurant, whatever, and you'll see some dad and he's got a 9-line apparel shirt on, and he's got a sling bag with molly webbing on it, and he's holding. It's everyone fucking knows what's in your bag, dude. And I guess that's fine, right? I mean, especially here in Florida, it's not, you're not going to run into any problems carrying a gun, but I think it's still better to be discreet, and I think that I think you want to maintain the element of surprise should you need it, and I also don't think you want to invite anyone who's a criminal to snatch your bag or whatnot. So I like that they're discreet. I mean, this could, hide the logo here. This could have come from Lululemon, or
yeah,
Aloe.
You can cover the logo.
Whatever.
You ripped it off. Yeah.
I mean, even with the logo, I mean, it just looks like it could be anything. It looks like it came from Lululemon or whatnot, and fanny packs are more and more acceptable for general society.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think it's
Also, just even people carry just. I have a friend who bought one, doesn't even carry.
Yeah,
puts all his just wallet, keys, he has tourniquet in there, whatever.
Yeah,
but medical
supplies. I mean, I think it's
No, No, I'm glad you like it because
Yeah, no,
I gave
cool.
it to you when it was like before
It was
I
a
even made it.
prototype,
It was a
yeah.
total prototype. So this is like I guess the final.
Yeah, I think.
But yeah,
You
thanks
wear
so
it as a
much.
sling bag too, right? It's got enough webbing here to sling it.
You can sling it, yeah. If you're not fat, if you're not like that big, they're not like I didn't make them huge, but it also has like that grip in the back here.
Yeah.
That I added.
Yeah,
But
no,
yeah, guys, if you enjoyed this podcast, like and subscribe. It helps grow this little pod. It doesn't cost you anything. It helps you a lot. If you do want to help the channel even more, you can go purchase one of these. I'll put them in a link below. Like about like 200 left. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed it. Have a great day. And if you want Jason to come back on, we'll probably have him on again in like a year or so, talking about whether it might be jiu-jitsu or fitness. And hope you guys enjoyed.